Yes, thank you very much, Punimala. That was very, very kind words indeed. And I thought you weren't listening in the back of the car. So, well, in that vein, I thought I'd start with a story that many of you might know, the Nakula Pita story. So, Nakula Pita is an old man, and he goes to see the Buddha at somewhere called the Crocodile Haunt, which is great. It sounds like a bar, doesn't it? But Crocodile Haunt, an Australian bar, but no. We assume it was because it actually had crocodiles in it. So he goes to see the Buddha at the Crocodile Haunt, and he goes to see the Buddha, and he said, I'm an old man, aged, advanced in years, having come to the last stage of life. I'm afflicted in body and ailing with every moment, and it's only rarely that I get to see the Blessed One and the monks who nourish the heart. So may the Blessed One teach me. May the Blessed One instruct me for my long-term happiness and benefit. So you can see he's arrived to see the Buddha, an old man, and maybe he's thinking that it's the last time he'll ever get to see the Buddha and the bhikkhus who nourish the heart. And the Buddha says to him, he says, yes, so it is, so it is. The body is afflicted, weighed down and encumbered. For who, looking after this body, would claim even a moment of true health, except through sheer foolishness? So that makes us feel a little bit better. He said, you should train yourself like this, Nakula Pita. Even though I may be afflicted in body, my mind will be unafflicted. This is how you should train yourself. And then something very interesting happens. Nakula Pita is delighted. He's delighted with the Blessed One's words, the Bhagavan's words. And he goes out and, bowing to the Buddha, he goes outside and just, you can imagine it, maybe he's left the Buddha's hut or wherever the Buddha was staying, and he just sits outside, just absorbing that experience of being with the Blessed One and receiving a teaching from the Buddha's own lips. And Sariputta walks along and he sees Nakula Pita, and he said, friend, your faculties are clear and calm, your complexion is pure. Have you had the opportunity today of listening to Dharma talk in the presence of the Blessed One? And Nakula Pita says to him, how could it be otherwise? I have just now been sprinkled by the Bhagavan with the deathless ambrosia of Dharma talk. I've been sprinkled by the Bhagavan with the deathless ambrosia of Dharma talk. So the word here for sprinkled, or it could be anointed, is abhisita or abhisheka, which literally means to be sprinkled with water, sprinkled over, anointed. But it came to also mean consecrated, as in the consecration of a king, which in ancient India was performed with water. So I always find this story very, very fascinating, because Nakula Pita wasn't ordained, but he was anointed. He wasn't ordained in the formal sense, but he was initiated. And I think there's a glimmer here in the Pali literature of the later tantric initiation. He wasn't ordained, but something far more personal and intimate took place, a relationship with the Buddha himself. And what's interesting is, as the sutta goes on, Sariputta says, well, did you ask the Buddha what he meant? And Nakula Pita went, no, I didn't ask him what he meant by that, actually. You know, my body will be afflicted, may be afflicted, but my mind will remain unafflicted. No, I didn't really ask him what he meant. And Sariputta goes into the meaning of what the Buddha might have meant by that. But what I find interesting about the story is I don't think really Nakula Pita needed it. He'd already got it. There was a sort of direct communication with the Buddha. All the Buddha said was, even though I may be afflicted in body, my mind will be unafflicted. And that's how you should train yourself. He didn't need anything else. Something took place far more personal, far more intimate with the Buddha that didn't need explanation. It was direct and immediate. It was of a different order, so much so that it changed his whole appearance, and he said he was consecrated like a king, with the deathless ambrosia of Dharma talk. And this is the root of initiation. Bhante says that initiation is being invested with spiritual power, energy, even spiritual authority. And you can really get a sense that Nakulapita in that moment was invested with that spiritual power and energy, even authority. And I think that dynamic that happened with Nakulapita and the Buddha is reflected in our ordination ceremony, particularly reflected with the symbolism of the initiation vase. And that's why, if you weren't here last night, some of us offered our ordination vases to the shrine. And I think what initiation is doing, that part of our ordination ceremony, or the whole of our ordination ceremony, which is an initiation, is drawing out, is a particular aspect of ordination that is intimate, direct, and vital. So that's what I'm going to talk about this morning, how the initiation contained in ordination is intimate, direct, and vital. And I'd like to do that by unpacking a few things that Bhante has said over the years about initiation. Of course, now we've got the concordance, and it's absolutely incredible. It's just incredible. I had a very delightful afternoon in Sheffield Buddhist Centre with... I don't know if it's out in print yet because I haven't been home for a while, but I've definitely got it on my ebooks. And I spent an afternoon in Sheffield Buddhist Centre with the complete works and the concordance on my laptop, in some kind of heaven, really. Trying not to get distracted by other little things that you could have looked up. So, yes. So, yeah. So I'll start with initiation as being intimate. So initiation comes out of a relationship between you and your preceptor, private and public preceptor. And we could say, well, the private ordination and the relationship between the private preceptor is more intimate. I was reflecting on that a bit because now I've experienced both from the other side, as it were, and I think they're intimate in different ways. So yes, the private ordination is much more personal. Over the years, you've witnessed your ordinand's personal struggles, and you've witnessed how through it all they've kept that sort of steady beat of going for refuge to the three jewels, and you're confident in that, and you've seen it taking shape in their lives. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to be on the end of that. And of course, our own preceptor has witnessed that taking shape over our lives. In a sense, I think of myself and my early days at Triratna Loka and what I must have been like. In a sense, that's not so important. What was important was the fact that I always consistently kept going for refuge. However chaotic my mind was, that was that steady beat throughout my life. So yes, the private ordination is more personal in a particular sense, but the public ordination is also intimate because the public preceptor is welcoming you into the order. And it's quite a privilege to be on the end of that relationship as well, because what I can see in an ordination retreat is that you've got the bardo between the private and the public ordination, and people are incredibly open and receptive. All their defences are down. There's no defensiveness at all, which is a very exposed place to be. There's a pure relationship with going for refuge, and at the same time, all the bits of yourself that weren't fully on board might also be acting up. They might also be wriggling around. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. And one has to get into communication with one's whole being. The bits of you that don't want to do it, that want to live a a safe and an ordinary life, maybe you don't want to make big changes in your life, they're all coming up as well. And there's no defendedness. There's a kind of level of defendedness that we have on a day-to-day level of protecting ourselves against the world. And that seems to go in that bardo between private and public. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions, but I'm just talking about what I've seen. And in the public ordination, the public preceptor is sort of ready to catch that person in the order. It's almost like a sensation of someone falling, very, very open, falling, and you're there to catch them, to say it will be okay. What you're doing is worthwhile. What you're doing is valuable. Have confidence, have confidence. One step forward now is the greatest act you could make in your life, really. Yes. So it is an intimate relationship as well, even with your public preceptor. They've witnessed you join the order. And there is, of course, the whole process of ordination, an ordination request, an ordination proposal from the private preceptor, and then the public preceptors really considering that person and whether they're ready to join the order. And Bhante says that this is what makes an initiation an initiation. It's that personal relationship and personal connection. And he's very, he's very strong in what he says about this. He says it's not actually possible to have mass initiations. And it's not possible to have mass initiations because there's no personal relationship with the teacher and the disciple. I'll read you a quote from Milarepa in The Art of Discipleship 2. Whether or not an initiation is tantric depends entirely upon the degree of rapport between you and the person giving the initiation. If there is no rapport, labelling it as a tantric initiation has no meaning at all. Don't be misled by all the colourful Tibetan ritual. Likewise, if you learn a Mahayana visualization meditation practice from a teacher, it is not called a tantric initiation. But if there is sufficient rapport between you and the teacher, in effect, it is a tantric initiation. So that's quite a departure, actually, from the existing, particularly the Vajrayana tradition. He's saying that it's not really dependent upon a particular ritual or a ritual initiation. It's dependent upon a relationship and a rapport between you and the person giving the initiation. And if you learn a Mahayana visualization meditation practice from a teacher, it may not be traditionally called a tantric initiation, but he's saying it is because of the relationship between you and your private preceptor. So the giving and receiving of our sadhanas is a tantric initiation, even if that's not what Tibetan lamas may say. And then he goes to say something even more radical. He says, the tantric mental attitude is simply a Buddhist mental attitude. So that even this sort of labelling of a tantric initiation is not something that begins and ends with Vajrayana Buddhism. It's actually something to do with the Buddhist experience itself, as we've seen in the Pali Canon with Nakulapita. And he said the Buddhist mental attitude that this is characterised by is complete openness. And he said complete openness should characterise Buddhism as a whole. So this is Bhante's understanding of initiation. Initiation is based in Kalyana Mitrata, not a formal Tibetan guru or not a formal Tibetan initiation ritual. And I think this is quite radical because I think there's something in us, or maybe there's something in me, or maybe it's something I've seen around, which is that we still have an idea that the real initiation is with the classic guru, a realised teacher and a kind of formal initiation. And that the person doing it should have certain sort of Tibetan or Vajrayana credentials. We don't think of initiation always with the people that we know and have our actual communication with. In a way, that's more difficult, it's more problematic, there's more layers to our relationship with our preceptors. But that's what Bhante's saying. He's saying that initiation takes place because there is a rapport, a personal connection between you and your preceptor. And I think it's important to not miss what we have, because we have that network of Kalyana Mitrata and we have a relationship with our preceptors. And it also explains to me something that I've been reflecting on for a while. Maybe it's an experience that I have, which is there's a problem for me when we import teachings and practices from other schools of Buddhism that would traditionally depend on an initiation from a guru and a whole system of spiritual discipline that we seem to, in modern Buddhism, sort of take out of its traditional context. I was really reflecting on this. I had a very fascinating session with the storyteller Martin Shaw about why he became an Orthodox Christian. And he said how he used to actually be interested in Dzogchen Buddhism, but it didn't teach him how to pray. And I thought that was very, very interesting, because I think we're going to miss a trick in Buddhism if we take traditional teachings that require a system of spiritual discipline and an initiation from a guru out of their traditional context and just give them, you can buy all these books on the sort of higher teachings of Dzogchen completely out of a personal relationship. And in a way, that summarizes it. It doesn't teach you how to pray. It doesn't teach you how to have that personal relationship with a guru, which traditionally those teachings would be based on. And I think taken out of the traditional context and that system of spiritual discipline, we lose the initiation aspect. We lose that context of intimacy. We take the teachings that we haven't been initiated to and we lose what we have been initiated into. So we have our own initiation. We do have an intimate connection and relationship with our preceptors. And for me, trying to import another kind of system into my own is interesting. I'm fascinated by the other teachings and the whole range of Buddhist teachings and practices. But I'm slightly left on the outside. There's some of them where I feel I'm slightly left on the outside, and it's because I don't have an intimate initiatory connection with those teachings. I haven't got that initiation aspect. I haven't got that intimate aspect with a teacher in those traditions. So for me, it never quite works. I always feel slightly like I'm on the outside looking in. But I do not feel like I'm on the outside looking into my own tradition. I've spent the last good part of 30 years immersed in this tradition, and I was ordained 20 years ago. So I think I'm not on the outside looking into my own tradition, and I know who my teacher is and teachers. So yes, we have our own initiation, and that is born out of our own system of Kalyana Mitrata and our own system of spiritual discipline as put forward by Bhante. So that might be something to reflect on in your chapter groups. So in tantric initiation, you give yourself completely to the initiation with nothing held back. You give yourself completely to the communication with your preceptor. Bhante says, tantric initiation represents a spiritual communication at a very high level of experience indeed. And from that communication to take place, there mustn't be any obstacles in the way. There must be complete openness on both sides. So the initiation depends on openness in both sides. He says, in an initiation ceremony, the guru doesn't just give instruction or even inspiration. They give themselves to the disciple. And how can they give themselves unless the disciple gives themselves to the guru? So there's a relationship of complete openness, complete giving ourselves completely. And of course, that's what makes it so joyful. In a way, all the preceptor really wants is someone to be enthusiastic and to love the Dharma as much as they do. That's my experience. That's all I want for Christmas. And sometimes people say, oh, thanks so much for taking so much time with me. And I'm like, I've been waiting for you. My heart is full. I am full of the Dharma, and I want to communicate that. To communicate that is the highest joy in my life. But it requires openness from the other person. It requires someone who wants to talk about these things. Actually, I'll say I was trying to look up what the Pali of intimacy might be, because of course I like to do these things. And it's Visasa, which is interesting because there's two connections with that. It's from a root that means svas, can't quite say it, but which is to breathe. And it's also, I think, I was trying to look up the etymology, but I suspect it might be related to sasana, which is teaching or dispensation. So it's trust or confidence or intimacy that comes out of breathing, which I think is an interesting connection. And it also comes out of teaching and dispensation. The intimacy is born out of communication, and it is born out of trust, and it's born out of trust in mutual Dharma practice. I think problems with our preceptors can sometimes occur when we bifurcate our personal relationship with our preceptor against the teaching aspect. And then we get a bit confused. Are they my friend or are they my teacher? And sometimes they feel a little bit more like my friend, and sometimes they feel a little bit more like my teacher. But I think what this is saying is that intimacy arises on dependence upon openness of Dharma practice. Without Dharma practice and a shared Dharma practice, there's no intimacy in this Buddhist sense. You're just mates. So if we want intimacy with our preceptor or preceptee, it has to come out of openness of Dharma practice. And openness of Dharma practice takes effort. We have to use our time with our preceptors or preceptees well. Relaxed, yes, it's good to be relaxed. Not too relaxed. Maybe a little frisson or something. But also to dig deeper with our Dharma practice, to talk about our meditation practice, to study together, to talk about our Dharma inspiration, to talk about our ethics. And this will perfume our relaxed and informal time. You can't really have that connection without those things. Going back to the Buddha and Nakulapita's heart was nourished by talking about the Dharma with the Buddha and the Buddha's disciples. He was receptive, he was open, he knew his question, and he had a real question. He was reaching the end of his life, and his body was afflicted, and he wanted to know how to train himself. It was a real question, and the Buddha responded to the real question, and they both knew. They both knew. And in that moment, something happened. There was the sprinkling of the ambrosia of the deathless. And I think some of us will recognise that experience, maybe in the context of ordination itself, maybe outside of ordination. There's a moment of clarity, of sharing, of intimate Dharma sharing, and something passes between you and you know. Yesterday, Subhadramati was really inviting us to spend time with people we don't know on the Order weekend. And I was very moved on the college meeting, actually, when we had a rejoicing of Arta Priya, who was stepping down retiring as a public preceptor, but also he's reaching the end of his life. And we had him on Zoom in here, and we rejoiced in his merits. And we asked if there was anything he might like to say to us. I mean, what a guy, what an order member. You know, he's a fullest order member in the true sense of the word. He said to us, well, yes, I do have something to say. I think it's really important to be very friendly to new college members, because even though they're very experienced, they might feel a little bit adrift on the college meeting. So someone's coming to the end of their life, and that's what their message is to the College of Public Preceptors: be friendly to new people. And I think that's important, because if something can happen on these order events, and I've felt it by myself, sometimes I've sat down to someone I hardly know, and we've had a little Dharma sharing of some kind, and something has passed between us. I can think of a number of occasions where that's happened, and we have both known. And I think it's also that came out of a kind of relaxed Dharma sharing. It wasn't necessarily meeting up one-to-one with the people that you know very well. It comes out of meeting also new people. So yes, it's intimate. Initiation is intimate. It's direct. There is intimacy, but it's not just about your relationship in an initiation. You are linked directly into something timeless, the deathless ambrosia of Dharma talk, which is Dhamya Kataya Amatena. Excuse my Pali pronunciation. I do take comfort in the fact that no one actually has ever spoken Pali as a natural language, which is good. Imbued by a sort of slightly London accent. Anyway, so Amatar is ambrosia, the drink of the deathless, the drink of the gods, which bestows immortality. So what is the deathless ambrosia of Dharma talk? Well, it's nirvana itself. The deathless ambrosia is a synonym for liberation, enlightenment, nirvana. And there's no suggestion in the text that Nakulapita was enlightened himself, but he was in contact with enlightenment, because he was in contact with the Buddha not just as a person, but as an enlightened being, as someone who is embodying the transcendental. And you really get a sense of that with Nakulapita, that he knew who the Buddha really was. He was in touch with what is traditionally known the Rupakaya and the Dharmakaya aspect of the Buddha, the physical presence of the Buddha as a historical enlightened being, but also the presence of the Buddha, which is something much more than the Buddha, which is the wisdom of all the Buddhas, the wisdom of liberation itself, the Dharma, which makes enlightenment possible. So in initiation, there is the Buddha and the Dharma present, and by extension, there is the Sangha. When I was ordained myself in Tuscany, I remember in the private ordination, I had a very, very strong sense that I was surrounded by all women Buddhist practitioners who had been ordained. I don't know why it was like that, or why it was just women, but it was just women, all of whom had been ordained, and I was surrounded by their very, very tangible presence. In fact, I sort of saw them with a slightly different eye. The three jewels are very, very present at ordination, because initiation is an intensification of going for refuge to the three jewels. So this is also Bhante's unique understanding. He talks quite a lot about Wongkur, which is the Tibetan word for Abhisheka in Sanskrit, which means initiation, which is in giving or empowerment of energy. But he always reflected, this is what he was told by his Tibetan teachers and Tibetan friends in Kalimpong. Well, Wongkur is a giving of energy, an empowerment of energy from the guru to the disciple. But he reflected that you can't give someone else energy. You can't somehow give someone else your spiritual experience. Otherwise, the Buddha could have just walked around northern India giving people enlightenment, which would be quite nice, really, wouldn't it? Handing out energy to people. Here you go. Here's some spiritual energy. Here's enlightenment. Here's stream entry. It's not like that at all. It's not like that at all. So what is transmitted? Bhante said his own understanding of initiation has been informed by the centrality of going for refuge as the basic definitive Buddhist act. centrality of going for refuge as the basic, definitive Buddhist act. He says initiation has become for him, or became for him, an aspect of going for refuge, representing tremendous amount of energy inherent in that act. It is all contained there. Initiation is contained within going for refuge. And he said, everything has in a way grown out of or been elaborated from the going for refuge in one way or another. So the power of initiation is the act of going for refuge itself. Everything has grown out of going for refuge. And that act of going for refuge and the initiation that's contained within going for refuge is stimulated by the ritual context of ordination. He said the actual ceremony of going for refuge is the culmination of a process that has been going on a very long time. There is building up to it, and due to the very special circumstances, the fact that it is a retreat and you are there just for the sake of ordination, and you have been doing more meditation, and your thoughts are concentrated, the whole process comes to a culmination and you experience your going for refuge, especially that ritual context, in a more intense manner than usual. So ordination is simply an intensification of your experience of going for refuge. But it's your going for refuge that's stimulated. So ordination itself and the whole symbolism of our ordination ceremony is drawn out in the context of going for refuge. The central part of both ordination ceremonies are taking the refuges and the 10 precepts. And then the implications of that taking the refuges, the 3 refuges and then the 10 precepts, the implications of that are further unfolded in the sadhana, the new name, the vase, the initiation vase, the kesa. They all come out of that central part of the ordination ceremony, which is the taking up of the precepts, of the refuges. They are a confirmation of going for refuge. And Bhante says the going for refuge represents your commitment of yourself as an individual to your own spiritual development, your commitment of yourself to the path of higher evolution. And it's that which makes you a Buddhist. And he said that is a sort of initiation. So it's commitment. Going for refuge is commitment to the 3 jewels, and that is an ordination, an initiation in itself. So ordination takes place with effective going for refuge, witnessing of effective going for refuge. And the way Subhuti talks about it in Initiation into a New Life is like this. He says, effective going for refuge to the 3 jewels, as marked in the ritual of ordination, is the first step in a new life. One is effectively born again as one who has shifted the emphasis of their life from the samsaric round to the progressive trend in reality, however far there may be yet to travel. This is not merely an inner change, but a change in public identity, which is, of course, more fully recognised in the public ordination ceremony. This is truly a new beginning, entry into the family of the Buddha. So initiation is a commitment, a stepping up or stepping through or stepping into a new life. And it's active, it's not passive. It's not like you just turn up to something and have an initiation. Initiation is marking your effective going for refuge or even at later stages, other stages, levels of going for refuge. One definition of initiation is the act of beginning something. And you're beginning a life in the order, the Triratna Buddhist Order. And there's a commitment to Bhante's understanding and presentation of the Dharma. There's a commitment to Bhante's system of spiritual discipline. So I think it's important to realise this. It's not a passive act, it's an active act. And into a particular commitment, We're not in the order a kind of umbrella organisation of Buddhists. We are ordained into a particular living tradition and make a commitment to a particular tradition. And I think it's really important to have confidence in that tradition, to have confidence in what we've been anointed into. Not just a collection of sincere Buddhists all doing different Buddhist practices and different things. And I think this is what's happening as time goes on. You know, we're a very, very new Buddhist movement. And as time goes on, our lineage comes into focus. The lineages of teachings, practices, institutions, and inspiration. And we can explore that in more depth, what our lineage actually is. I know myself, before I'm about to do a private or a public ordination, I always do the Kalyana Mitra Yoga. And I'm not alone in that. It does feel the most appropriate thing to do, because there's a directness between myself and the system of spiritual discipline that I'm part of, and the system of spiritual discipline that someone else is just about to step into. It's direct. There's a direct relationship of going for refuge to the three jewels and a commitment to a particular path of spiritual discipline. And I think there's much, much more to find in that, in the going for refuge to the three jewels and commitment to a particular spiritual discipline. There's termas within our ordination ceremony itself. And going back over Bhante's works, particularly with the publication of the complete works and the concordance, which helps us navigate the complete works, there's secret teachings within Bhante's teachings. And in a way, that's his genius. He didn't actually explain it all. I think at one point he said, I've just set hares running. But you've got to follow them. And I think to follow them, we've got to have confidence in what he actually gave us. We've got to have confidence in our own initiation. The danger is we try and be master of something we're not initiated into. I know that Subhuti was talking about a particular senior Buddhist teacher, not in our tradition, in another tradition, who said he didn't really want members of the Triratna Buddhist Order coming on his retreats because they had the tendency to go on one retreat and then start teaching it, which I thought, oh gosh, that's true, you know. So I think we don't need to do that, in a sense. We have our own lineage, and we can be really proud of that lineage. And we can teach from that lineage, from our intimate connection with our preceptors, and from our going for refuge into a particular system of spiritual discipline. So, yeah, and we can be proud of that. If we're not proud of that, maybe we need to dig a little deeper. Initiation also has the symbolism of the consecration of a king. It's a communication of spiritual power and authority. And I think that power and authority comes, well, in the Buddhist tradition it does come, from confidence in our teacher, confidence in the Dharma, confidence in the Sangha, confidence in our particular training, and from the harmony of with our companions in the holy life. It comes from that confidence. And the spiritual power that we are anointed into comes from that confidence in a teacher, the Dharma, the Sangha, in our training, and from harmony with our companions in the holy life. So you might recognise that list as the 5 wildernesses of the heart and their opposite. It's interesting, I've just gone over that sutta again with some of the mitras in Sheffield, and it doesn't end with the wildernesses of the heart. It goes through into the Iddhipanas and the sort of spiritual powers that are cultivated through those confidences. And I think that is part of initiation. That's what we're anointed into. So the last aspect of initiation is that it's vital. It's vitality. And by that, what I mean is it's alive with energy. So going back to Wong-Ker, Wong-Ker meaning literally the giving of energy or transmission of energy. Bhante considered himself, is there a literal passing over of energy? And he said, no, it's not a literal passing over of energy. It's the energy that's activated by going for refuge to the 3 jewels and stimulated in the ritual circumstances of ordination and the energy-full personality of our preceptor. I quite like the idea of having a personality that's energy-full. So, yes, initiation, particularly within ordination, is stimulated by the ritual circumstances, by our relationship with our preceptor, but it's our energy. Having said that, he does actually interestingly talk about 2 experiences that he's had where there was a literal passing over of energy. And one of them was negatively. He talks about an American faith healer who said, "Oh, you look tired." And then he grabbed his arm and he said, "I'll give you some of my energy." What a mistake to do that to Bhante. Anyway, Bhante said it was horrible. He said he got all this weird energy from this guy, and he said it was like dirty dishwater. And he said he spent weeks trying to get this dirty dishwater through his system. So we definitely don't want to do that. I do feel a little bit like that when I'm very selective about who might give me some sort of body healing Reiki or massage. Maybe that's just my suspicious nature, but yes. The other time is more positive. He talks about an experience that he had when Dudjom Rinpoche gave him the Vajrasattva initiation, and there was a sort of experience of light passing over. But he said even of that, he reflected on it in more depth, and he thought it wasn't really Dudjom Rinpoche's sort of energy, it was his energy that was stimulated in that initiation. So in whatever way going for refuge activates our energy, and we need energy. I think we often focus on the aspects of developing metta and wisdom, but we don't always focus on the aspect of energy in the transformation of consciousness. And particularly in this new phase of Triratna Loka, and with the work that we're doing at the moment, I really, really see the need for energy. Actually, I've got a lot to give, and I don't want my sort of energy levels to hold me back in the work that needs to be done. Fortunately, they don't very much, but I do have to reflect quite a lot on what really does give me energy. And Subhadramati and I had a very interesting experience on the Mythic Context retreat, because we had all these extra meetings. It was a bit of a nightmare, really. So we had all these extra meetings that we had to do about Triratna Loka Unlimited while running a Mythic Context retreat, while doing the going for refuge and prostration practice twice a day. And we were sharing the leading of that practice. And so we both said to each other, well, look, if you want to take a practice off, if you want to go and have a rest instead of doing the prostration practice twice a day, that's fine, I'll cover you. And then we both looked at each other and went, no way. Doing the prostration practice twice a day is the only thing that's getting me through this. If I don't do it twice a day, I cannot do all those meetings. There was 0 time off at all. Which I thought was very, very astute of us, really. And if I may say so myself. And it did actually work. It did work. There's energy. There is a lot of energy in our beings, but it's contained within going for refuge. And to access that energy, we need to stimulate our going for refuge. There's so much work to be done. There's so much work to be done. There's so many people who would like to benefit from the things that we have been given. So many people who would benefit from what we have been given. And we really must activate our energies in order to be able to give that to them. I think also energy is very attractive to other people. There's a dynamism of going for refuge that is very, very stimulating and draws people together. I really see this at Triratna Loka. It's like there's such an energy. And it's energy based on going for refuge. And because it's based on going for refuge, it's vibrant and alive and in a truly exciting place to be. It's wonderful. Really, really wonderful. Even though it's so squashed, sometimes I don't even have a room at the dinner table when I go in to have my dinner. I don't mind. I'd rather have a stimulated going for refuge. And I can eat on somewhere else, So there is energy contained within our ordination that we can draw from. There's energy contained within the sadhana practice. And sometimes that's what I focus on, of the energy contained in my sadhana practice. And that's what helps sustain my activities. There's energy contained in our names. There's energy contained in our relationships with our preceptors. And I think particularly in confession, I think there is a difference when we confess to our preceptors than when we confess just generally in our chapters, although we definitely should do both. In a way, confession links us back with our preceptor in their initiatory role, which is as a preceptor, as someone who's witnessed our going for refuge and taking up the precepts. So there's a lot of energy contained within ordination. And it might be worth reflecting perhaps in your chapter groups about where in the ordination was the energy most alive to you. And maybe in your lives, where is energy most alive to you? Where is there most energy in your practice and in your ordination? And come back to that experience. If you look at the initiation vase, they all have on their spout this peculiar kind of mythical crocodile type creature called the makara. And the makara is the unity of the heights and the depths, because a makara crocodile, mythical crocodile, can move between land and water. So Bhante talks about that as the kind of the creature that can move between the depths and the heights. And then there's also the 8 symbols of blessing. In a lot of the vases, if you look at the top, there's those Tibetan kind of eight fortunate symbols, or whatever they're called. Anyway, and I think what this means is through the intensity of our commitment, we are blessed. And that's why it's important to keep coming back to our own ordination, because it's through that initiation, through that intensity of going for refuge, we are blessed. We transform the depths and the heights, and we're linked to the best of all beings. So Bhante says the initiation vase is a symbol of the plenitude of transcendental powers and energies, the life-giving stream of the bodhicitta, the will to enlightenment, and the spiritual influence of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas pouring down upon humanity. It's quite a statement to make, because the ordination vase is used in our ordination ceremony, so we can take on that there is a plenitude of transcendental powers and energies. We're connected to the life-giving stream of the bodhicitta, and we are connected to the spiritual influence of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas pouring down on humanity their blessings. I really did enjoy, I think it was a while back on the preceptors meeting, private preceptors meeting, and I did something bold. I said that I would lead a session where we just listened to the first ordination ceremony. Can you imagine that we've got the first ordination ceremony available just to listen to? Like, how amazing is that? Anyway, so I was amazed and delighted, and so we listened to it. We did a 3-fold puja, and then we listened to the first public ordination ceremony. And I do confess that I hadn't listened to it in advance, which one might do when one is about to lead a session. But having been a bit short of time, I didn't. I knew it was half an hour long because I could see it. And the public ordination ceremony took about 15, 18 minutes. And then I was thinking, what is on the other 12? And then I started to sweat, sitting there in silence, just listening to this. What's the next 12 minutes? And what it was all these different Buddhist schools coming to bless our ordination ceremony. And all this chanting, just chanting and chanting and chanting, one chanting followed by another chanting, followed by another chanting of all the blessings from all the different Buddhist schools. And what I imagined there at that moment was this kind of blessings of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And I think that sort of hum of blessings is there present in the ordination ceremony if we tune into it. So I'll leave you with that image. And I just leave you with that invitation, the invitation to have confidence in your own initiation. Your initiation, my initiation, our initiation, is born out of our relationship with our preceptors. It's born out of the intensity of our going for refuge. And we are anointed into the tradition of the Buddha Dharma itself and also our particular spiritual lineage. We're anointed into this tradition, and we are blessed by the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas.